What's going on, FA Nation? John Impemba here with Howard Bender. Welcome into the Fantasy Alarm NFL DFS podcast and live stream for Week 14. Howard, we have just 10 games on our main slate this Sunday due to Bye-Mageddon Part 2. 6 teams on bye weeks, just like we had a handful of weeks ago. But unlike those weeks couple back, we do have a lot of top-tier talent on this slate to pick through. You know, I know last time we had all these buys of some of the top names were out of the lineups there because of buys, but not this week. Top quarterbacks, wide receivers, running backs, all available to us. Some of them in some really, really good matchups.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's kind of funny. Everybody in the seasonal fantasy world complaining, whining, and crying about, you know, another Bye-Mageddon, 6 teams on bye. And I was like looking at the teams on bye. I was like, man, these teams all suck.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, are we really? I mean, I guess if you want to look at it from a DFS standpoint, we could turn around and say, well, we're losing a lot of value on this slate because, you know, low-end players on Atlanta or low-end receivers in Chicago. You know, Christian Watson has been a nice little cheapy kind of a darling. But, yeah, dude, there's, you know, these 6 teams there, those 3, Indy, New Orleans, and Washington, there's not a lot to love here about for a DFS world. So yeah, dude, let's run through it here because there are a lot of top price guys out there, and the question is I mean, where are we paying up? Where are we finding our value? This has been the ongoing issue all season long. So let's try and tend to it here.
Yeah, listen, we'll start with the quarterbacks like we always do. I do the quarterback coach for Fantasy Alarm, you know, so every week this season to this point. And we have all the top price guys, right? Allen, Hurts, Mahomes, Burrow, they're all on the slate for this one here. Lamar Jackson's already out. They said Tyler Huntley's going to be starting this Sunday, so don't need to include him in the conversation. All of them are going to be in play. It just depends on how you want to build your roster, right? Like, I don't really think any one is in a better spot than the other. They're all in spots where we could see, you know, potential blowouts, you know, Buffalo against the Jets. I know we saw the Jets upset Buffalo a few weeks back, but that was, you know, with the Jets being at home. Now they're on the road here. The Giants have been sliding back for the last couple of weeks. You just saw Jalen Hurts not even use his legs to beat the Titans. He threw for 380 and 3 scores. Mahomes versus Denver feels like it could be a bloodbath in the making. The only reason that's not a double-digit point spread is probably the fact that it's in Denver. You know, and then you have Burrow here at home against Cleveland, which is probably going to be a little more of a competitive game, but he's got Jamar Chase back, and he's the cheapest of the top 4 guys. So, like, you know, all of those quarterbacks, I think you can justifiably build a lineup around and feel pretty confident in them being in your lineups.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Josh Allen, they're dealing with some potential rain and snow up in Buffalo. They're going to be dealing with that. So you do want to keep an eye on the weather there. I love Jalen Hurts. To me is he's probably one of the safest guys out there. You know, he does have the ability to do it with his legs, which keeps that floor up. And just as you just pointed out, he shows you with his arm as well. So against the Giants, I absolutely love him. You know, my big fear, I'll be honest with you, as much as I love Mahomes, my big fear is that Denver, like, just, again, teams just keep playing down to Denver's level. Mm-hmm. Have you seen Denver get blown out at all this year? I mean, I think that it's really kind of weird, but yeah, I mean, every game that they're playing.
Yeah, their defense is held up. I'll say to the other point that we've talked a lot about when it comes to Denver's defense, they haven't really faced like a great schedule, right? They haven't faced a lot of offenses that could put pressure on them like Kansas City can. You know, Baltimore last week obviously had Lamar get hurt. Carolina with Sam Darnold. The Raiders offense sucks. Tennessee's offense only running the football. Jacksonville. The Chargers were maybe the one team, but Chargers at home, we talk about it all the time, aren't really great teams. Indy, the Raiders again, the 49ers, Houston, and Seattle. Like, they haven't really faced the top offense this year, so their defenses look pretty good. This is the toughest test they've probably faced all season.
Yeah, it's probably definitely going to be the toughest test that they're going to face all season. So, you know, I mean, but you kind of have to figure out how is this going to line up and what are they going to do? I mean, yeah, you could have the defense just, I mean, you know, remember we saw Mark Purcell yelling at poor Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
So you could see the defense just be like, you know what, screw this. And you know, we're done with this embarrassment. It's such a huge pain in the ass. We've been busting our balls all game long here against Mahomes and the Chiefs. In the second half, we're going to walk away because our team's not doing anything at all. it's definitely a possibility there for sure. No doubt about it.
And they suck against tight ends. So, like, Kelsey's going to run in there and just, have a day with them. So
you'd like, but from your lips to God's ears, dude, because I've got a Kelsey Mahomes stack in a high stakes league that I definitely need for it to go off this week.
Yep,
no doubt.
I agree with you. So, like I said, there's any of those top guys are fine. You can build it however you want. In the mid tier, Dallas is a 17.5 point favorite against Houston, so I don't think we can go with Dak Prescott there. No. Watson looks super rusty. No one's going to go back to him here, so maybe there's a contrarian play if you're building multiple lineups to throw him in one. I liked Geno Smith this week. Again,
until
all of a sudden he's limited with the shoulder injury. So,
and it's his throwing shoulder.
Yeah. So, what's the deal there, right? Is he going to play? Is he going to be limited? A lot of concerns, obviously, in that spot. Kirk Cousins let us down big time against Detroit in week 3. Last week against the Jets, sucked. 170 yards and a touchdown there. Hard to really go back and trust. Even in a spot against Detroit, it feels like we've been let down. Lawrence let us down last week. Is it just you spend up on one of the top 4, or you just play Jared Goff this week? Is that where we're I feel like that's where I'm going, since Geno's now questionable all of a sudden.
I kind of feel like, again, this is one of those games where I look at Kirk Cousins and I'm actually still intrigued. I don't like Detroit's defense. I get it. Jeffrey Okuda's back, and it's going to be Okuda versus Jefferson part 2, which does have, some interesting, undertones to it. But, this is a game where I don't think there's any pressure on Kirk Cousins. Minnesota's, doing well. They're probably going to win their division. There's not a whole lot of competition there. And we all know that Kirk Cousins, when there is no pressure on him, that's when he thrives the most. So I'm actually not against using Kirk Cousins here. I'm more inclined to using him than I am even Jared Goff. Listen, Goff's got Amon-Ra St. Brown. But, are we DJ Chark? Oh, the Jameson Williams stuff. Have we talked about Jameson Williams?
Yeah,
have we had this conversation? So get this. This is the best. This is really where you do see some fallibility in your fantasy analysts here, in the sense that you messaged me. It was Saturday night.
Yeah.
At some point on Saturday night about Jameson Williams, and they were activating him, and everything they saw over the last 3 days has just been unreal. And, and then I'm digging a little deeper, and I'm listening to all the comments from the coaches and stuff like that. And then I feel like I got crazy fish hooked by I was catfished by the Detroit Lions, because I was yeah, throw him into your GPP. Why not? His min price. It doesn't have to do anything. He played 3 snaps.
Yeah. Had 8 snaps. I think he had 2 targets.
Yeah, one of which didn't even go near him.
Yeah.
And it was just an outright travesty. So I feel the sting from that. But listen, I like Jared Goff, and I like his, some of the weaponry, but man, that's going to be a tough one. That's going to be a tough one for me to kind of zone in on. So yeah, for GPP tournaments, I'll look at Goff and I'll look at Cousins in this, just because of this matchup and the high point total. But if I'm looking at cash game work, yeah, I'm paying up, and it's probably going to be either for Hurts or Burrow.
Is it interesting at all to you that Detroit is a 2-point home favorite as a 5-7 team against a 10-2 Minnesota Vikings team?
No, I kind of expected that. You saw Minnesota beat the Jets last week, but they did not look good doing it. A lot of people are saying that Minnesota is a paper champion here, in the sense that they're just not a great team, and yet they're just lucking out with these wins. And Detroit has just been, feisty throughout everything. And then they just put up 40 points on the Jags. So I think that's kind of where everybody really is with them. And that's kind of why the spread is the way it is. And I kind of like Minnesota +2.
Yeah. I think it's definitely an interesting spread on paper, just given the way the records are played. My reasoning for Goff, and yeah, it's probably maybe more of a GPP play because of it, but you look at the last two quarterbacks that the Minnesota Vikings have gone up against, in Mac Jones and Mike White, and they've combined to throw for 760 yards, throwing to less talent. I would say Garrett Wilson's really good, obviously, but no real talent there in New England to catch the football. And then we have we saw DJ Chark really explode last week for Detroit. They have Amon-Ra St. Brown, and I would imagine Jameson Williams plays more than 11% of offensive snaps this week. I wouldn't go back and say make him a core play. I would do the same thing I did last week. I'd put him in one of three, whatever that I'm out there building, and kind of going from there. But there's, and the fact that D'Andre Swiift played almost 60% of snaps last week, I think is huge just for that offense in general as well. First time we've seen that out of him since week 1. So I'm with you. It's spend up. It's Geno if he's cleared, and then you can go Cousins or you go Goff. I don't have interest really in anybody else. What are your thoughts on Tyler Huntley? Because I know many people will like him this week as well. I'm
going to avoid it. Listen, yes, he can run, he can move around, but who's he throwing to? We tried to hope that Mark Andrews and he were gonna, kind of link up last week, and they didn't really during the game. Now they've had the whole week to practice, and okay, maybe Mark Andrews becomes that target, but when Demarcus Robinson is he's your number one receiver. I think that there's just an issue there. I just don't like it. It's so funny. I was talking to Josh Wagner from SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, and he does our NHL work over at Fantasy Alarm as well. Looking at that, we want to be invested in Justin Tucker and Chris Boswell coming off of the IR in that game.
Yeah,
in Pittsburgh.
Probably.
That's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, listen, I think for me, Huntley is the mobility that people are going to be attracted to. Obviously, he ran for a touchdown to 40 yards last week. There's not a huge drop-off to, in terms of like that type of upside out of Huntley that we saw last year as well. The one thing that Ryan Hallam actually pointed out to me last on Sunday when we do the Fantasy Line postgame show is if you look at the game logs for Tyler Huntley versus the game logs for Lamar Jackson, and maybe this is just maybe Baltimore's playing ahead more and Huntley is playing from behind more, but Tyler Huntley last year had like 4 games of 35 plus pass attempts. Like Harbaugh seemingly allows him to throw the football more than we generally see out of Lamar. Now maybe Lamar is pulling it down more and limiting his pass attempts, but Huntley was going out there and attempting far more passes on average than we saw out of Lamar Jackson attempting. And then last week he goes into the game after Lamar goes out, 27 of 32, 184% pass attempts. Again, 187 yards, not great, but still the fact that they're letting him kind of go out there and throw that much, kind of interesting to me. And I agree, like, who's he throwing to? The talent, Duvernay, Robinson, Mark Andrews, great. Andrews is obviously the big guy there, but just interesting that they do let him throw that much. He's not a backup quarterback that comes in and they change their game plan, they shy away. If anything, they seemingly throw more with Huntley than they do with Lamar.
Yeah, you again, I'll build a GPP lineup with him maybe, but overall, if I'm paying down at QB, I'll look at Tannehill against Jacksonville. We'll check out his ankle. He doesn't seem to have the questionable tag anymore, but he did roll his other ankle. I'd look at him. I'd actually kind of keep a watchful eye out on Sam Darnold also. If I'm thinking about paying all the way down at quarterback, I think one of those two guys probably stands as good a chance, if not even better than Tyler Huntley, going up against Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh. That Pittsburgh D, listen, we rode that Pittsburgh D all last year at home.
Yep.
They have TJ Watt back. That secondary has gotten significantly better over the last 4 or 5 weeks as well.
Yeah, they're very cheap again too this week. So on DraftKings, I'll be sure playing him again, like we always do. Though they didn't do well for us last week. They let us down last week. Only 4 fantasy points against Atlanta, but willing to go back there. All right, so that's the quarterbacks. I think we're in consensus. We want to spend up. There's a couple of value guys we're looking at, but for the most part, we're spending up at quarterback. Running backs here. McCaffrey and Barkley are both questionable. Barkley's got a neck CMC, as we know, still sort of dealing with that knee. But looked fine last week. Obviously, 28 fantasy points. Brock Purdy now at quarterback against Tampa Bay. You got to think they're going to be doing a lot of checkdowns, a lot of handoffs, probably a lot of screen plays. Nothing that they're going to be looking to push the ball downfield with Brock Purdy there. So CMC, if you're looking to spend up, is probably fine. You got a price dip on Derrick Henry, which I think is kind of interesting because this has historically been a really good matchup for Derrick Henry against Jacksonville. Again, this is the second lowest price he's been all season long. Week 2, he was 7,800. So slight discount on Derrick Henry this week, I think, is kind of appealing with Tennessee at home. And then you have Joe Mixon returning against Cleveland, and this has been a smash spot for running backs all season. We talked about it last week. The only team worse against running backs than Houston was Cleveland going into last week. Dameon Pierce actually had a good week against Cleveland, so maybe some Joe Mixon return game here.
Do we look at, because it's kind of funny, you look at Derrick Henry being the most expensive running back on FanDuel, yet he's, dropped down on DraftKings. I mean, are we, even the sites, are they overvaluing the pass catching aspect, and are they ignoring the fact that, you know what, man, I'll take three catches from Derrick Henry every single week. If he's going to get me 3 catches and has that ability to rip off chunk yardage because everybody's afraid to tackle that dude when he's running out in space. So, I mean, I find it very funny. Like Derrick Henry, fantastic value at 7,900 here on DraftKings. Not so much at 9,000 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I think what it is also just recent performance. Last 4 games, 2.7, 2.2, 3.1, 2.8 yards per carry. Green Bay should have been a really smash spot for him. 28 for 87 in that game for a touchdown. He got you there. Got you the 25 fantasy points. That's great. But tougher run defenses in Philly, Cincinnati, and Denver, and they kind of shut him down a little bit. That offense didn't do too much. So I think it's a little bit of an overreaction to sort of recent performance. Now you're getting him right back into a cushy spot here against a Jacksonville defense that is not good against the run. And it should be full systems go here, I think, for Henry. So plus we're in the time of the year we talk about all the time, like second half of the season is generally a Derrick Henry time. They just runs through these guys. So I like it. Again, I think you can pay for the top guys if you want. Henry, Mixon, and then the two Cowboys running backs are going to be interesting and what direction you decide to go in this week against Houston. I joked with Coop, maybe you could play both Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard in your lineups this week against Houston, because you don't know which one's going to go off, but we've also seen games where both of them had strong performances in their spots. So it's obviously not an optimal scenario, but we have seen, like last week against Indy, where both Elliott and Pollard had big fantasy days together.
So did Malik Davis.
Right. Yeah. Oh, he got his touchdown there at the end, but yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he was like doing the mop-up duty there at the end, and all of a sudden it was like, you could have used Malik Davis as a pay down. It's kind of funny, I definitely think that you could use both Zeke and Pollard together in the same lineup. I'm not against that. I did that on Thanksgiving, and it worked out beautifully for me. So yeah, I definitely think that this is it's a great spot to be able to do it, especially with Pollard is up at 67 on DraftKings, and Elliott is at 6,100. You look over at FanDuel, Elliott's 8,000, Pollard's 7,500.
Yeah.
So, I think you can get away with either one of them, or you could get away with both of them. I definitely think that's a possibility. And, considering it's a 17-point spread, here's the funny thing, right? Is Mike McCarthy smarter than Kevin Stefanski?
In terms of what? Like just going with the run?
Well, yeah, because Stefanski was a moron last week. Nick Chubb had 8 carries through the first half against Houston. He finishes the day with 80 yards and what do you have, 16, 17 carries in total? This was a game where Nick Chubb should have had 25 carries at minimum. Should have had 25 carries. Could have ripped off 100+ yards. And that was just, but he kept going back to this Deshaun Watson nonsense.
Right.
Mike McCarthy, is he so stupid that he could turn around and say, well, yeah, I've got these 2 running backs here, but why wouldn't I want Dak to throw to CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz and those guys? Like, I just, it's always that concern about the stupidity of the coach. I don't think McCarthy would do that, especially because it's a home game for Dallas and just make it easy for them. But
the running game is also such a big part. I mean, again, granted, it's a big part of the Cleveland offense as well. But I feel like because they got Watson back, Stefanski wanted to like give him an opportunity to showcase. Like nothing's changing in the game plan for Dallas here. Like same guys, they go in, week out. The game plan is going to be the same. So I wouldn't imagine all of a sudden they would just not run the football because that's kind of been their identity with both backs here. So. But yeah, again, you look at the touchdown run for Ezekiel Elliott right now. Last 5 games for him there. He's got 7 total rushing touchdowns. I mean, the guy has been a monster in the red zone. And Pollard's your big play guy that can break off a 35, 40-yard run here. So I do think both.
It's so funny that you say that because, Nick Chubb is, outside of PPR formats, that guy was just he's like the number 2 running back in all of the league, coming off of a 100-yard performance with a touchdown, scoring 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 touchdowns in a 5-game span here right before that. I mean,
well, like I said, I think what happened they changed the like it's just they got Watson.
I know why they did it, John. I'm just saying McCarthy is an idiot, and we know McCarthy's an idiot.
It's true. That's fair.
I know why Stefanski did it. Stefanski's a jackass.
Sure.
He's a complete jackass. Oh, yeah, I got Deshaun back. Oh, like that. It was a dumbass move on his part. We know it was. I just, again, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. This isn't like our Patterson-Hinton fights, but this is just,
Which I've been very close to being 100% correct both weeks.
And yet you weren't.
Well, last week, no. I still think I was right on Hinton. He got you almost 10
points. That touchdown that they took away from Patterson, it was the easiest holding call in the world.
Yeah, but he didn't need to hold. He was already in the end zone. It was a stupid play by the Falcons.
No, it was easiest call.
Oh, I agree that the hold was there. I'm saying he didn't need to hold him for Patterson to score, which is what the annoying part was. He had the corner already. It was just the offensive lineman was being dumb and grabbed him when he didn't have to do it. So, could have been. What could have been? What could have been this week is going to be at D'Andre Swift at 5,800. Everybody is going to be in.
You do the playbook then for tomorrow, then.
That's fine. If you're not including D'Andre Swift in the playbook, let me know. I'll throw him in the dartboard. He played 55% of the offensive snaps. He out-touched Jamal Williams for the first time since like week 2. He scored the touch. Scored in the end zone again. Got red zone carries as well in this game. Got his last 2 weeks. It's like 14 targets in the passing game. I think it is as well. Like if Swift is healthy, and I'm gonna assume he is because this is the most playing time they've given him in basically all season long. Then at $5,800, he's like $2,000 too cheap, right? Like a fully healthy Swift earlier this season was over $7,000. He is 5,800 against Minnesota here. So I'm going to go back in. He gave you 30 fantasy points in week 1. He gave you 16 in week 2 before getting hurt. Last week he gave you 21 in one of his highest playing time games of the season. So I am going to play a lot of D'Andre Swift. He's going to roll his ankle or hurt his shoulder in the third carry of the day.
Well, you know what? Here's the question. Would you rather play Pollard and Zeke or Jamal and DeAndre?
No, I'm not going to play Jamal. I'm not going to play Jamal Williams with D'Andre Swift getting more work. I still think Jamal Williams will get some of his goal line carries, but you got to remember the reason Jamal Williams had been so productive is because D'Andre Swift was seeing 20% of the offensive snaps. It's not the case anymore. Jamal Williams played less than 50% of offensive snaps last week. He still scored a touchdown, and he continues to score touchdowns. But the fact that D'Andre Swift also got red zone looks last week is what worries me a little bit. Or worries me a little bit for Jamal Williams. I'm excited for it for D'Andre Swift because if now what we're looking for out of Williams here is 10 carries and a score and he's getting only red zone work, none of those yardage in between the 20s that can help boost his production is going to really be there for him now. So, if he gives you 9 fantasy points at 5,900, I think you're screwed when Swift at 58 is getting 14 targets and could get double-digit carries as well there. So,
well, how many? I mean, let me ask you this because I'm looking at the snap count right now, and yes, Swift had 51% of the snaps to 30 for for Jamal. And that's it's the first time since week number 8 that he outsnapped him.
Mm-hmm.
The question that I have is that matchup based, or is that that's what I'm saying. Is it a trend that we need to be paying attention to, or is this just something specific about the matchup against the Jacksonville Jaguars that made it easier to utilize Swift than it did to utilize Jamal Williams? We were sitting there yesterday watching the Raiders against the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
And how many times did you watch the Raiders run that same stupid play where they handed the ball off to Mac Hollins? Right. Because the defensive lineman was a backup defensive lineman on the end for the Rams, was like 300 pounds, and the guy couldn't, he just didn't know the position.
Yeah.
And so the question I have is that, because listen, nobody hates Jamal Williams more than me, but are we dismissing him so much in favor of Swift? Are we believing that this is Swift now taking back this backfield, or was that just matchup based?
No, I think here's why I think it is a sign of things changing. It's because of how protected they've been of D'Andre Swift all season long with his injury stuff, that it wouldn't make sense for them to all of a sudden push him. Like, they've had better matchups to use D'Andre Swift more than they've been, and they hadn't been. They've been kind of bringing him along, limiting his touches, giving a lot of the heavy workload to Jamal Williams there. And at some point, we were going to get to a point where I think D'Andre Swift was healthy enough to start playing more. And, we just didn't know when it was going to happen. To me, I feel like that's what we saw last week. Now, Jamal Williams is still very capable of going in there as a backup and getting 2 rushing touchdowns. We were seeing that when Swift was healthy earlier this year anyways. But when Swift is healthy this season, he's been their primary back in that offense. I don't think it's going to all of a sudden be an 80-20 split. It could very well be another 55, 35, 40% kind of change there. But the fact that he got double-digit carries for like the first time since week 2, I think it was.
Since week 1.
Week 1, right. And the fact that they continue to utilize him in the passing game the way they do, in a blowout as well. Like, for a team that has been protecting D'Andre Swift all season long, and a game they win 40-14, for him to get that workload, to me, feels like they're ramping him up, because Dan Campbell's looking at the standings and they're like, shit, we might make the playoffs. We got an opportunity here, right? Like, you got to start playing your best guys. I don't think it's a coincidence that they activated Jameson Williams last week. They started getting him into some game playing time, started giving D'Andre Swift more of the workload to see, like, this guy's a game changer for us. We know what he can be when he's given the opportunity to play. So again, is he risky? Of course. He's D'Andre Swift. The guy is made of paper mache, right? But he's $5,800. Like, the guy can go out there and lead the week in points,
I get that. Well, then I expect to see Jamal Williams as your contrarian corner running back, because I'm just not ready to walk away from him completely. I get what you're saying, and I see what the snap counts and the touches looked like last week against the Jaguars. I'm just not going to, because somebody actually asked me this on I think in our Discord. Somebody actually asked me about, they're like, well, now that Swift is taking over this backfield, and I had to stop him and be like, is he though? Because, yeah, I get what everybody's saying, and I get what you're saying about Dan Campbell babying D'Andre Swift. But, I mean, listen, he was out for 2 weeks. Then they had the bye, and then he was out against Dallas. And then he came back in that Miami game, and he played 51% of the snaps. They gave him 51% of the snaps in that game, and he didn't do shit. Mm-hmm. He had 5 catches, 27 yards, and a touchdown on the passing edge, but he had 5 carries for 6 yards. So he was completely ineffective there. And you look at what happened weeks 8 through weeks 12, Miami, Green Bay, Chicago. Green Bay, Chicago, these are 2 teams that, suck completely against the run. So do the Giants. Mm-hmm. And you're looking at 2 carries, 6 carries, 5 carries. If they thought that he was healthy enough to give him 51% of the snaps against Miami, well, then why did you pull back against 3 teams that are so clearly terrible against the run? He got into the end zone against Chicago and the Giants, but I mean, you're talking about, 11 carries for 26 yards and 2 touchdowns over those 2 games. So while, yes, they're babying him, they didn't his first game back from Miami. They pull back. They're like, oh, wait, we just made a mistake. Like, that's all I'm saying is that, looking at the data from last week and looking at the numbers for Jacksonville against Jacksonville, yeah, it looks great. It definitely looks fantastic. 14 for 62 with a touchdown, 4 catches for 49 yards. Yum.
Mm-hmm.
Red zone work. Yeah. 5 red zone touches for him last week. I just have that concern that I think, because we see this all the time. We see this in fantasy and we see this in DFS. People jump the gun.
So just looking back at some of the notes there, after that game against Miami, he was limited in practice the week with ankle and shoulder. So there's a good chance, knowing D'Andre Swiift, that in that Miami game, he got re-injured, right? And he was limited at practice throughout the entire week. He only played 16% of the snaps against Green Bay because of that. Then it says he continued to have his practice reps capped with an ankle and shoulder injury. He's dealing with lingering ankle and shoulder injuries, so he'll continue to have more opportunities to play. Basically, all of the updated information throughout November has just been limited, still dealing with limited ankle and shoulder soreness. So, in my opinion, I think what happened was he got re-injured in Miami, and because he was ineffective, probably playing through some of that stuff early on, and then you saw him not really involved these last couple of weeks, because he's been being able to, and I think he had that comment against the Athletic saying like he didn't think he was going to be 100% this year at all or something like that. He's just constantly playing through the shoulder stuff. And one of the things with the shoulder injury, I said, was they weren't going to hand him the football because they didn't want him going into the pile and re-injuring himself. So they're utilizing more in the passing game than they were in the running game, which is why you saw Jamal Williams getting all of those carries. So to me, again, I'm just taking it as a sign they gave him 14 carries. That he's obviously healthier. He's feeling good. He was explosive in that game. Again, I'm going to trust sort of my belief in how they want to utilize Swift in the offense and take that for what it is. I think he's healthy enough to play the 50% snaps. They felt like he was healthy enough coming out of his injury in week 3 to start in week 8 against Miami and get that workload. Probably got re-hurt based off some of the practice reports that were in there. The news and notes on his name there, and then going from there. So that's my interpretation of it. If he's practicing in full this week, which it seems like he is, I'm going to go ahead and gladly get bit again by D'Andre Swiift in this week's DFS slate.
I mean, the great thing is that these guys, both Swift and Jamal Williams are very close to each other. I mean, they're 59 and 5,800 on DraftKings. They're 7,200. Swift is more expensive, 7,200 to 7,000 for Jamal Williams over on FanDuel. So, listen, I think that, if you're looking at building lineups and using these guys, I guess you could go, if you're that confident in D'Andre Swift and his emergence here, then you throw him into cash and Jamal into a GPP.
No, I don't think Swift is a cash game play. I think he's just a GPP. Just because I like a guy doesn't make him a cash game play. He's still very.
I'm just asking. I'm asking if you would consider him in a cash game.
No, I would never use D'Andre Swift in cash. He's like Anthony Davis in the NBA. You just at any moment that guy could get hurt and ruin a whole lineup. So I would not use him in cash games now.
I would build a lineup with each guy. I really would. Just to see what it's like, because listen again. Yes, he had a great role there against Jacksonville. Jamal Williams still had 11 carries for 35 yards and a touchdown there. And this is a guy who's got 6 touchdowns over his last 4, 8 touchdowns over his last 6.
Yep. Yeah, I said the red zone work will still be there for him. I think
and Minnesota blows, dude.
I think he'll get some touches. It's just about if he doesn't get the between the 20s work, right? If his snap count is now 30%, and a lot of that is going to be red zone carries, is 11 for 35 and a score good enough for you? You need him to score twice.
It's the Ezekiel Elliott, Tony Pollard tandem.
Sure, but Elliott at least gets the stuff between the 20s as well. Like, he'll get a lot of workload there. Now, I'm not going to go say it's a full-on 60% snap share for Swift this week either, but, again, if Jamal Williams isn't going to get 18 to 20 carries like he was the last 3 weeks to help him get 70 yards to go along with his touchdown, because he has 0 passing down work since week 8, right? That's all been Swift. So his PPR upside is dead. He needs to score touchdowns. He needs to get yards. It's the only way he is scoring in fantasy right now. So And he can still go out there and get you 2 rushing touchdowns. Like, even with Swift active, they gave him red zone opportunities. He cashed in on one, Swift cashed in on one. So, yeah. I think we spent a lot of time talking about Lions running backs, but it's kind of how I'm feeling about it.
Have we? Yeah, probably.
All right, a little bit lower. Deonta Foreman's healthy against Seattle. I think we like that at $5,400 here. Didn't miss practice. Came back, practice in full. Chuba, I think, is banged up a little bit, right?
Did Deonta Foreman practice in full today?
Yeah, he's got no injury designation on his name.
Beautiful, beautiful. I had looked early this morning when I was going over things and saw that he still had that questionable tag on him.
Zonovan White's days may be numbered because Michael Carter also no injury tag on him for this slate. So Michael Carter could be back here against Buffalo.
Any thoughts to Robert Saleh's comments that Zonovan Knight isn't going anywhere regardless of Michael Carter?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to use them both because they weren't using a second running back really with Michael Carter. I think they're just going to both cut into one another.
Yes, I agree.
You know, they weren't using James Robinson at all, but they'll probably use Zonovan Knight in some capacity in their lineup. It just kind of cuts into both of those guys. Travis Homer at 5K. Are you interested if Walker and DJ Dallas are both out? He's the only one that's practiced this week.
Carolina giving up almost 140 rushing yards per game, 13 rushing touchdowns allowed over their last 3 weeks, almost 125 rushing yards allowed. With the way Pete Carroll loves to run the football, if both DJ Dallas and Kenneth Walker are out, yes, I will consider using Travis Homer as a value running back. I just added him actually to the watch list.
Yep. Any other value darts for you here?
Any other value darts for me here? I'm scrolling through. Knight, Homer. Well, now that I'm not buying into James Cook like everybody else is buying into James Cook.
Yeah, no, I talked to Coop about this because he was at the game against New England Buffalo. He said Singletary got banged up a little bit in that one, and he was being worked on the sideline for a little bit. And he thinks that's why Cook got his highest snap count of the year. Gotcha. Had to deal a little bit with Singletary on the sideline for a bit.
Okay, that makes sense. Then I don't really, with the exception of that GPP dart throw of Malik Davis for his fourth quarter.
Would you play Matt Breida if Saquon Barkley got ruled out?
I don't like Matt Breida.
Okay.
I mean, listen, I get that there's some value there, but Matt Breida is not a guy who can take it between the tackles or a guy you want taking it between the tackles. And what we have seen is that if Saquon Barkley isn't getting enough of the passing work like we wanted or expected him to, like, why do we think that maybe that'll just kind of fall onto Matt Breida? I mean, are you just looking at him as like a punt play?
Yeah, I mean, it's $4,300 if he ends up being the starting running back. I mean, I don't know. Like, again, value saver, could get double-digit carries, gonna get some targets. Definitely not a high upside play. But the one way to attack Philly's defense, at least recently, had been to run the football. Just again throwing names out there. I know Jordan Mason's been a name I've been getting tweeted at. With they don't really have a backup running back in San Francisco. He had 8 for 51 against Miami. CMC is a little bit banged up. Purdy is back there. Again, not sexy, just more seasonal questions in DFS regarding around Mason, but just still questions that have come into me about him. So,
all right,
wide receivers. We've been talking a lot about the value at running back. So if we're paying up at quarterback, we're probably paying up at wide receiver here a little bit as well. Again, I think all of these guys are going to play. Amon-Ra St. Brown was your chalk last week at like 35%. Very much going to be there again this week as one of the highest rostered, if not the highest rostered wide receiver. $7,800 is a great price for him. Usually we're paying, again, chalk receivers, Jefferson, Diggs.
Are you not? I was going to say, are you not addressing Justin Jefferson with the possibility of Okudah being back?
No, I was just pointing out the fact that Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be the highest rostered wide receiver.
Yeah, probably.
Yep. Again, I think they're all fine. I'm not really worried about Jefferson against Okudah. I know it didn't work out in week 3. Target share is still great. Found the end zone last week against Sauce Gardner. I'm fine with Jefferson. Especially if you're playing Cousins, he's cheap. So you can stack him pretty easily. Goff and Amon-Ra St. Brown, super easy to stack. can fit all those guys in your lineup.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. All right. Next level of wide receivers then. Where do you like? I mean, listen, Jefferson, Diggs, Brown, Chase, Amon-Ra. Beautiful.
Yep.
I'm actually, I would consider CeeDee Lamb for a GPP just because they're gonna throw the ball some. They're not gonna, just completely dismiss it. But there's definitely concern as far as like what kind of a workload he's actually gonna see. DK Metcalf showed up on the injury report. T. Higgins just showed up on the injury report with a hamstring issue.
Mm-hmm.
Zach Taylor says he's going to play, but does that make you nervous? I had T. Higgins in my watch list. A hamstring issue kind of makes me maybe want to look at Tyler Boyd a little bit more.
I don't know. I think it all depends on what the severity is. This could just be a reasoning for his off day or reasoning for his limited participation. These coaches and everybody now, they have to give specific reasons for this stuff. The fact that he was already being like, no, he'll play on Sunday makes it to me think it's not anything overly serious. Not too worried.
I can hope. We can only hope because, again, guys showing up late on the injury report, you practice in full on Wednesday, and then on Thursday comes and you can't practice. It doesn't work that way in the NFL. In the NFL, everybody takes off Wednesday if they're banged up, and Thursday is the day that they got to get back into the mix.
Yeah, he practiced fully Wednesday, was limited on Thursday and Friday. So
correct.
Yeah, we'll see. I can understand the fade. I don't know if Tyler Boyd's the guy though. I mean, he didn't do anything with Chase being out, so a little skeptical on his impact there. Could be a dart though. Godwin and Evans obviously against a tough San Francisco spot here, but you do have, we didn't talk about it, you do have the Tom Brady return to the Bay narrative in play here. Also, if you believe in Tom Brady's FU mentality, Shanahan supposedly twice passing on him when Brady had wanted to return to San Francisco. That narrative has been floated out there this week as well. When he was a free agent, he apparently contacted San Francisco and they were like, nah, we're okay. We got Garoppolo. And then when he was looking before to go to Tampa Bay, or when he retired this past year, he talked about San Francisco, and I guess they weren't interested. And when he left New England as a free agent, he wanted to go to San Francisco. And again, they were kind of like, we're okay with where we're at with Garoppolo. So, you
don't consider. I mean, I get it.
He's also only $5,600, Tom Brady. We didn't talk about him, but 3 straight weeks with 2 touchdown passes, throws 50 times a game.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, listen, I personally, I think that Brady looked like shit against New Orleans the entire game. He woke up at the tail end in the fourth quarter, midway through the fourth quarter, and things happen. Okay, fine. That's the Saints. Saints defense banged up, dealing with a lot of injuries as well. Nothing great. Tristan Wirfs out 100%. San Francisco, much better pass rush. Mm-hmm. Tom Brady, not exactly the most mobile character out there. And I think you've got better corners in San Francisco watching over Evans and Godwin. So, I mean, listen, I don't hate it. I'm not going to totally rule him out, but I'm not going to play the sort of pseudo revenge narrative for Tom Brady because he felt dissed by Kyle Shanahan because Shanahan didn't want to turn over his team to a 40-year-old guy.
Sure. I'm just playing it all out there. I also was a little surprised, again, if you believe the DraftKings point rankings here, San Francisco allowing the 9th most fantasy points to wide receivers according to DraftKings scoring. I think that was a little surprising. I expected them to be a little bit better there. So Kirk were in play, and
you have to also take into account that this is DraftKings scoring also. So all of the bonuses and shit that pop up in DraftKings scoring, you have to understand that that's taken into account when they're calculating how many points are scored against.
Oh, for sure. I'm just saying, obviously we're looking at DraftKings, so I was a little surprised that teams are at least hitting bonuses or receivers are doing that well against that secondary. Kirk at 66, even with Jacksonville last week, letting a lot of people down, he did not. 6 for 104 against Detroit. Certainly paid off his tag in the mid-tier there. Are you a believer in Devonta Smith? Again, a big game out of him last week, slowly starting to come on the last couple of weeks here. Any interest?
I mean, some. I mean, listen, there's interest all over the place for a ton of guys. I mean, is this a guy who, as I'm sitting there, like, see, that's the thing is that, like, if I'm working through the watch list and I'm building the playbook, I mean, everybody can have some interest in there. It's what matchups are popping the most on paper for you versus, and then you have to go back and then look at what the reality of the situation is and look at all the injuries and stuff like that. So, I mean, yeah, there's going to be some interest in Devonta Smith. Is there, huge interest in him right now? Do I look to Devonta Smith as a guy at this price point that, entices me the most? I mean, he's a good guy. He's a number 2 receiver on this team. He gets into the end zone. I mean, so I think he's okay. Sure. I just there was nothing really that popped or really stood out when I was doing all of the research that I do to open up the watch list.
Perfect. Again, totally okay with just kind of moving guys out of player pools. A lot of what we do is not only talking about guys we like, but also talking about guys we don't like to kind of eliminate them from where they are in our player pools. Even on a 10-game slate, there's still a lot of wide receivers to mix themselves through. So if we're looking at guys under $6,000 then, Howard, like, who are the ones that are popping off this page for you?
It ain't Jerry Jeudy or Cortland Sutton.
Sure.
How about that?
Well,
all right, guys under 5K who I like or intrigue me a little bit. Juju Smith-Schuster intrigues me a little bit. DJ Moore intrigues me a little bit. Gabe Davis is like a low-end GPP play I would be interested in. And I got to tell you, for like cash game play, I don't hate Darius Slayton. I got to be honest with you. This dude now, over the last 7 or 8 games has had at least 58 receiving yards. He doesn't always get into the end zone, but he comes up with decent plays. He's got a decent floor for the number. He's the number 1 receiver. Darius Slay isn't gonna shadow him, so they're gonna have to move him around. I feel like Slayton is a guy who just routinely flies under the radar for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's fine in tournaments. Cash games, I obviously worry a little bit just knowing the defense and secondary that they're running up against. But he is good for a big play. I mean, that's where a lot of his points are coming from. 90 yards last week, he had a 55-yard catch. 63 the week before that, a 44-yard catch. So he needs that big catch to make up for what is basically half of his yardage, it seems like most days. Sure. Daniel Jones not afraid to throw it down there. If he catches one ball at 5K, he can certainly bring through some of that for you. I'm surprised you didn't say Garrett Wilson. Maybe you missed him, but $5,900 against Buffalo. Some really strong performances here in 4 of the last 5.
Somewhat intrigued, but we all remember the last time Mike White faced Buffalo.
Sure. So you're gonna play off of what happened last year to what happens this year?
It's a combination of things. I mean, if you genuinely watched that Minnesota Jets game last week, there's zero chance that you could come away and say that Mike White looked good. Like, there's no way. Mm-hmm. Mike White looked like shit. And yeah, he ran one in late in the game. And yeah, he threw for 369 yards because he had to throw the ball 8 million times. But this dude, I mean, I watched him hit defensive backs in the chest with the football. Mm-hmm. Like, if you had a better secondary than what Minnesota was throwing out there, Minnesota's secondary is very, very soft right now. All right. Mike White would have been intercepted at least 4 or 5 times last week. Sure. It was that bad. So when I look and I say, all right, yeah, Buffalo's defense is kind of, softened a little bit, but, over the last couple of weeks, but Tre'Davious White is now back at 100%. Jordan Poyer back 100%. Their pass rush is rock solid. I don't believe in Mike White. I really don't. And it's not just, I mean, it's as a Jets fan and it's as a football analyst. He's an okay backup. He does well in practice. If teams aren't preparing for him, then he can shine. But you look at his game log last year, and it was the same thing. You know, he had that 400-yard game with 3 touchdowns, 2 picks that everybody seems to be ignoring. And then he left. I think he was taken out in favor of Josh Johnson for the 3rd game because he couldn't fucking do anything. And then Josh Johnson got hurt, so Mike White came back in, and then Mike White played against Buffalo the week after that and threw for like 200 yards and 4 picks with no touchdowns. Mm-hmm. So, rain, sleet going on in this game. Mike White against a healthy Buffalo defense. Yeah. I just can't get behind the Garrett Wilson play at 5,900. I'm sure that there are a bunch of others. Let's see who else is there. I'd rather have Juju at 56. I'd rather have fucking DJ Moore at 55 than to pay up for 5,900 for Garrett Wilson just to watch Mike White take a shit on everybody.
That's fine. Value guys that maybe you have any interest in here. Pickens, D'Andre Johnson's questionable. Pickens kind of made some comments about not getting the ball. We talked a lot about squeaky wheels getting the grease.
Squeaky wheel gets the grease, baby.
So $5K for him. I like DPJ, and apparently Amari Cooper is questionable. Mm-hmm. So, I'm a big DPJ guy here. What are your thoughts on Adam Thielen all the way down to 4,900?
I like Adam Thielen this week, especially if you are concerned about Okudah and Jefferson button heads the entire game. I think it opens up a great spot for Adam Thielen. So I'm very much in on him at 4,900.
Thielen had 6 for 61 and a touchdown in that week 3 game. So that has to be the. Yeah, okay. He's been under 5K once already. That was against New England. He went 9 for 61 and a score. But that was also the Thanksgiving Day slate. 5K last week against the Jets, but again, a guy that's been pretty decently priced up a bit this season. So kind of interesting Thielen price tag here. Anybody else down here? Like if Treylon's active, do you have interest? Gallup 46.
I do. If he's active, I've got interest in him. If Zay Jones is active, I've got a lot of interest in him as well at 4,700. We talked about DJ Chark at 43. Yeah. He's got some potential here, especially what he had 5 for 98 last week.
Yeah, a big snap share, 5 for 98 last week. He had 6 targets. He had 5 targets the week before and a score against Buffalo.
Yeah. Elijah Moore? No, not really. I'm just kidding.
No. Corey Davis is playing more snaps than Elijah Moore is. So
Corey Davis is hurt, and he sucks anyway.
Oh, there you go.
No, but I see your boy. Your boy is hanging out there just waiting to be used this week, John.
Who, Kendall?
He's there. Go down to 3,000.
Yeah, Kendall? Is that what you're talking about?
Nope. Different boy, but a definite favorite of yours.
Did they call up, what's his face there? Can't even remember his name now. 3K?
3K. He is $3,000 on DraftKings.
What team?
He is 4,900 on FanDuel.
Who?
Who do you think it is?
I have no idea.
Oh, it's your boy Philip Dorsett.
Oh, I thought you were talking about
Min Price. Davis Mills is back. Brandon Cooks and Nico Collins both injured.
I mean, are they out or are they just limited?
They're questionable. They're limited, and they suck balls.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna go there. I thought maybe you were telling me like Laquan Treadwell ended up somewhere. I was like, we're.
Come on, man! I'm digging for those deep plays that I know you love.
No, that's not a guy that I would play. I recommended Dorsett in a much better matchup than going up against Dallas as a 17-point underdog. So. Not there for me personally.
What about Marquise Goodwin if DK Metcalf is out?
Sure, I guess it all depends on the arm of Geno as well.
Oh, Drew Lock, I thought you meant.
Yeah.
What about Julio Jones?
I don't mind Julio. I recommended him the other day or went to somebody because it was very, very deep tournament play. Targets have been there. He actually made a really nice catch last week as well. It would have to be, again, 1 of 20. He's not like a core lineup guy for me. Still think you can play Jameson Williams in 1 of 3, 1 of 5, whatever you're making out there. That's fine. Because I think he's going to play more snaps this week than he did last week. Now that he's got a game under him. So
pretty tough for him to play fewer snaps than he did.
I agree. So. All right, let's go to tight end. Kelsey's your top guy, $7,600. I think everyone's going to go to Hawkinson for the revenge game. Plus, Coop's got him on the cover of his tight end coach this week. Yep. So, going to be a popular play.
It's going to be a very popular play. I mean, listen, you can't dismiss Kelsey. Kelsey is the guy. I would happily pay up for him. Hawkinson is my next pay down there. There's minor interest in Pat Freiermuth this week. Yep. Baltimore ranks 22nd against the tight end in DVOA, so there's some intrigue there. But then as we're like scrolling through and you're looking at these tight ends, I mean, they're all, again, it's all just let's roll the dice and see what happens. Like, I'm sorry, but everybody who's like salivating over Greg Dulcich, I mean, really, we've been salivating over him all year long. When are we going to realize that this offense is just terrible? And, he's just not, it's just not a play that really like incites a lot of people.
It's a price point thing for me with him. And the fact that there's no Sutton, he kind of moves to like being an outside receiver for that offense. Judy's still on the inside. Hinton plays on the inside. 6 catches, 8 targets, 85 yards. A lot of people will look at as that being encouraging as well. He does have some long catches this season. So I think that's where people will look at it for $3,400. He's not a 4K plus tight end. So I think that there's going to be some appeal just from that perspective with Dulcich here.
It's very possible. Very, very possible. No doubt.
There's not much else though for me at tight end here, unless somebody gets ruled out.
There's nothing at tight end, dude.
Right. Would have liked if Cameron Brate was out, so we could just play Cade Otton again. But Brate seemingly is over whatever illness he had, so kind of kills the Cade Otton love there. So
yeah, they're again. I used Otton as a dart throw in the showdown slate, and he hit, and that was great, and that was lovely, but.
Maybe if Zay Jones doesn't play Evan Ingram at 3,300.
Maybe Zay Jones doesn't play and then Evan Ingram. Yeah, that's a possibility. That's a possibility. I don't hate that. I don't love it, but I don't hate it.
Austin Hooper against Jacksonville, 5 targets last week.
That's actually not a bad play. I've been giving people that as far as whatchamacallit goes, as far as like season-long fantasy. I'm like, yeah, you can take a shot. Like everybody's sitting here just consistently trying to find, the tight end points. And I'm like, it's never going to happen.
Right.
Stop looking. It's never going to happen. And yet they continue to look. So I'm like, all right, fine. Austin Hooper, go ahead. Give him a look. Go ahead. I mean, it's not really, I don't love it. I definitely don't love it, but it is what it is. I mean, if that's where you're at, but I mean, if we're talking about DFS, it just, you could pay all the way down for that. And just kind of, if you're going to punt the tight end position, then go ahead. But just know that the people who do use Kelsey and Hawkinson are going to have, an advantage over you because they're not punting that position. If they are punting anything, it's maybe their running back 2, or maybe it's their wide receiver 3, and they have better odds. I think they have better odds for their min price wide receiver to pop than a lot of people do with some of these low end tight ends.
All right, let me throw one more name at you. Sticking with Tennessee here, Chikagonkwo, right? Last couple of weeks here, 10 total targets. He had 4 for 68 last week. Look at the big plays that he's had. Week 9. Only 1 catch, 48 yards. Week 10, only 1 catch, but for 41 yards. Week 11, 1 catch for 31. And then he had 3 for 35, 4 for 68. And then you read the offensive coordinator yesterday afternoon saying that he's earned more opportunities and the Titans have looked up to draw more ways to get him the football. He was a 4th-round pick for them this year. They like Austin Hooper and Jeff Swaim as run blocking and short yardage tight ends, but for spreading the field, Chigagonkwo is an option for them. 10 targets the last 2 weeks for the guy. Big plays. Guys making big plays out there.
Listen, if that is a dart throw that you want to do, then that's a dart throw you want to do. It's a dart throw. It's a dart nothing throw.
I will
more
agree
than
with
that.
you on dart throw. The 10 targets certainly kind of piquing my interest there. And obviously, coach speak, I'm a sucker for it every now and then. So,
Yeah.
All right, let's go to defense.
I'm still gun shy from getting fish hooked on Jameson Williams last week.
Is it not? Do you not just plug in Dallas here and just move about your day? $3,800. They're not even $4,000. $3,800. They're 17.5-point home favorites. Davis Mills, no wide receivers. Like,
yeah.
Tell me how this isn't like a 5-sack, 3-fumble interception, maybe a defensive touchdown or 2, game in the making here.
Yeah, if you're paying up, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think it is. It's pretty big no-brainer, and the 3,800 is it's nice. I mean, it's not the it's not the 2,800 that the Steelers are, which
True.
we know we love.
True.
But yeah, I mean, Dallas is going to be a chalk defense for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Anybody else for you then outside of Steelers and Cowboys?
I gotta be honest with you, man. I'm kind of intrigued a little bit by the Titans defense. I don't hate the 49ers, to be honest, to get at home against Tom Brady in Tampa Bay. I think that, Brady's is subjected to, some mishaps here and there. But then, yeah, I think on if I'm looking at DraftKings, 2,800 for the Steelers is probably the lowest I would go.
Okay.
Would you go lower?
No, I wouldn't.
And on FanDuel, like the Steelers they're 3,800. They're probably the lowest I would go there. As well. Minnesota, Carolina, the Giants, the Jags, the Browns, the Broncos, the Lions, the Texans. Yeah, so it's kind of where I'm floating around.
Okay. I got a lineup if you got a lineup.
I built one on FanDuel here, so let me see if I can just make an adjustment. I want to get a better. I always like having that running back in the flex spot on FanDuel,
Yeah.
but as far as like pay downs at running back, let me ask you this: as a pay down at a running back, what do you think of Gus Edwards?
Yeah. I mean, again, they're going to run the ball a lot, obviously, there with what's his face there, Huntley. It just 6 for 12 last week wasn't really anything special.
No, it was nothing special.
So I don't know. On DraftKings, it's not. I'd rather go find $200 play Foreman. Are you talking FanDuel or DraftKings?
I'm looking at FanDuel here. So I'm looking for a pay down. I got Zonovan Knight. I got Gus Edwards. I could probably
Homer?
go.
Where's Travis
up.
Homer?
He's already in my lineup.
Oh. I got nothing for you then. James Cook?
I could go James Cook. All right, I'll plug James Cook in there.
James Cook at the very least had 5 targets in week 12 too. So like they're throwing him the football over Singletary here.
All right, let me see. Let me put James Cook in there, and I got to find a cheapy wide receiver. I'll throw your boy in there. And all right, I'm gonna go with a Minnesota stack.
Okay.
Because I know you hate it.
Yep.
And I will stack Cousins, Jefferson, and Hawkinson.
Mm-hmm.
It's very pricey. Running backs, I'm paying down Travis Homer and Deonta Foreman. My wide receivers, including Jefferson, are Amon-Ra St. Brown, Julio Jones, James Cook in the flex, Pittsburgh Steelers defense.
And that's on FanDuel?
And that's on FanDuel.
All right. Here's my DraftKings lineup.
I'm ready. Wait. Let me get there so I can plug it in. All right, go for it.
Jared Goff, quarterback.
Jared Goff. Okay.
D'Andre Swiift in the running back spot.
Yeah, you're a sucker for Swift.
Ezekiel Elliott.
Ooh.
Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Love him.
Adam Thielen.
He is. That was what I was thinking about. Like if I didn't go with Jefferson, I could go down to Thielen and find a way to get Derrick Henry into my lineup.
So no Jefferson here. Adam Thielen for me at 49. Jamar Chase at wide receiver.
Chase in there at 79. Okay, tight end.
Hawkinson.
Hawkinson.
Yeah. Treylon Burks is officially ruled out for Sunday's game now. So I went at flex Chigagonkwa at $2,700. And then we have the Dallas Cowboys defense.
The Dallas Cowboys defense. I love it, man.
Yeah. So
I actually really like that. I like this lineup a lot.
That is my DraftKings GBP lineup there for week 14.
That is everybody's DraftKings GPP lineup now.
Yep.
I'll put that in the examples.
Go for it. Label it Impemba's DFS podcast lineup.
I'm just gonna label it DKGPP.
That works.
I don't know if you read through the playbook and the dartboard stuff like that. You get shouted out.
Oh, I do. I read it. I read it. You give me a lot of praise and a lot of blame for a lot of different things. So it sounds
like... you're too funny.
Alrighty. Any other final thoughts here for everybody?
No, I really don't. I feel like again, this is one of those weeks where we'd probably prefer to pay down at running back and pay up for wide receiver. That seems to be what's working the most for a lot of people right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's going to be an interesting spot for a lot of people this week, like you mentioned here. With the game totals that we're looking at, some of the spreads, and just some of the elite matchups that people are finding themselves in here. In different matchups this week. So I'm in. I'm excited to see how this all plays out this week, Howard.
Me too. All
right, Howard will have the playbook and the dartboard on Saturday. Example lineups are on Sunday. You can find me and Coop Sunday mornings, 9 to 11 on the Better Sports Network live stream. Of course, Fensty and Howard are before that on SiriusXM from 7 to 9, bringing you all that early action there as well. So check out those two shows on Sunday. Get in the Discord. Everybody will be in there as well, hanging out. And then, of course, once games start, go to the Family Room channel over in the Discord and just hang out, watch some lineups with everybody, watch the games, and react to all the news that is going on. Week 14 is in the books here, Howard. Next time we talk to everybody, should be a good one. We will catch you guys later.